I will be honest with you, at the beginning of the year when I was like, okay, I'm gonna shoot more film this year, I was nervous about it. I was scared about, is it really gonna be like worth it if I spend more and more on shooting film? But I definitely did not regret it. And so I learned about 7 things that I'm gonna share with you in this video to try to convince you to shoot more film this year as well. I am a firm believer that if you don't shoot, if you don't get out there, if you don't experiment with things, that you will never learn. I kind of took that advice to myself last year and I was like, okay, I'm gonna shoot more film this year. I mostly shot medium format film, so 120 film, and it was mostly like 80-90% Portra 400. And the reason I did that was because I knew it was a really popular film stock for shooting weddings and especially portraits. I thought, you know what, I kind of wanna be a little bit more of an expert on one roll of film before I move on to something else. The biggest fear is getting back a roll of film and it being completely black or completely white. And you're like, are you kidding me? I like lost my photo. But actually the most common mistake or the most common issue that I found with my photos, shooting 99 rolls, I had more issues with focus than I ever did with exposure. The main reason for this was because the camera that I was shooting with was manual focus, and a lot of film cameras are manual focus, but I actually think that sometimes this wasn't even a bad thing. And I want to show you some examples. So if you look at this photo, like I can't quite remember if I meant to have it out of focus or not, but like I love the look of this photo and how that it's not like super sharp. It's very kind of like atmospheric and it's really pretty. This is another good example of a photo being out of focus and I'm loving it. I tend to focus like on the short side. When anytime, you know, my digital camera was out of focus, it tend to be like way far in the distance or kind of like a few feet behind. Often I really like how the photo turns out when the focus is kind of on the near side and a little bit out of focus. It kind of creates this kind of very dreamy look. Here's another example. This was on purpose, but again, kind of like more on the close side, and then everything in the background or kind of like the main building here is kind of out of focus. Same thing with here. This is I think the great thing about film is that you take a photo, you think you know where it's focused, but you don't obviously really know until you get the images back. And so a lot of the time it's a really pleasant surprise, being like, ooh, how did this thing turn out? And I think this shot is a good example of that, where it's like, yeah, I didn't know what it was gonna look like until I got the images back, and I was very excited to see it. As I shot more and more rolls, I began to be really careful and kind of double checking and making sure that a photo was in focus. And if I was ever kind of really doubting it, I would take another photo. And then I would be like, whew, okay, glad I took another photo there. Same thing here, where I did do this one on purpose because I wanted one that was like kind of a near focus, and then one that was actually like on focus on the actual subject. Because if I was using a digital camera, what would I do? I would just take like a million shots and then see, oh, this is in focus, okay, we're good. I started to be really intentional about where my focus was lying. And I started to play with that a little bit more. So this shot, you know, everything's in focus, great. But for this, I was like, ooh, you know what's really nice? If it's just like barely in focus and then it falls off right after that. So it's helped me to really focus on my focus. The second thing that I learned was what kind of, at least my tendency is in doing an incorrect exposure. And by far, I don't think I really had any images that were overexposed. They were always underexposed. This photo is a little bit underexposed, but this one definitely, this is definitely underexposed. But the thing is, this is like, it rarely happened. Like this happened because I was pretty much shooting in a completely dark room without a tripod and I couldn't go any lower. So it was more of just like a test more than anything. Sure, there's sometimes that I underexpose the image, but they're still often very usable. And the times that they're actually underexposed, or I can even tell that they're underexposed, is pretty rare. So once you get an initial hang of kind of like how to like use your light meter to expose a scene properly, it is way less scary than you probably think it is right now. And the third thing I learned is that film is forgiving and unforgiving. It's more forgiving than you think it is. The more that I shot, the more that I realized that actually it's kind of easier than I thought it was. But it's also unforgiving because the only way you can learn that is by shooting more and more film. And the thing is that you can't see immediately what happened. So you always have to learn after the shoot is done. You only get to learn when you get the photos processed and scanned. That's when you learn. And so that's why film is unforgiving, because you have to make a decision and you only can learn after it's all done. One last quick thing that I wanted to mention about metering, and I learned this from a guy who works at a lab. I noticed that other photographers metered differently than I did. They rated their film a little differently, they angled their meter at different angles, things like that. The thing that he told me, and I thought was really helpful, is whatever you do, figure out a system and then stay consistent with it. Because you need to have that consistency so that you're always metering the same way. And then when you get the film back, then you actually know what went wrong. Because if you keep changing how you're metering, then it's really hard to know how to fix it in the future. The fourth thing I learned was that I just shoot so much better when I use film. Like this, oh man, I would get like a roll of film back and I would have already gone through my digital images for a shoot for a wedding, an engagement shoot or something like that. And I would get the film back and then I'd be like, I like these so much better than like almost any of my digital work. And it's like, I got to some points where I was like, you know what? I don't even need the digital like images. Like I'd rather just have these film images. I'm done. I don't have to edit them. They're good to go. And I just found the more that I shot film, the more intentional I got. It just like pulled the best work out of me. The fifth thing I learned was that I think digital does have its role. There's some scenarios where it works way better and makes way more sense than film. Number 6 is, it was one thing when I was shooting only maybe 1 or 2 rolls. I'd send it to the lab, I'd get it back in a few weeks, and then I'd see the results, and I was like, oh, okay, like this is what I did wrong. The problem when I shot more and more was that I would send something off, I'd shoot more, send that off, shoot more, send that off, and then I'd get it back 2 weeks later. And I was like, oh, like, how did I shoot that? Like, how did I use my camera? It was really hard to remember what actually happened. Now, I know I could like write it down and I could write down my settings, but I'm not gonna do that. So that's made me seriously consider wanting to do some developing on my own. It's something that I've always wanted to do, but never really had a reason to do it. Another reason is that I looked at how much I spent on film and developing. And I spent a total for 99 rolls, I spent a total of just, I think it was like $33,900, which is a lot of money. A third of that was the film, and then 2/3 was processing. That made me think as well, like, if I can process some of this film my own, especially the stuff that is for my personal work, I could shoot a lot more film. And I would have the ability to get immediate feedback. So if I'm trying something and I want to see like what it looks like the next day, if I process my own film, I can actually do that, which is a very exciting idea and will definitely be a future video on here. And the last thing that I learned from shooting 99 rolls of film is that I want to shoot more. I definitely want to shoot different types of film stocks, and I want to use different types of cameras, and I just want to like dive into film even more so than I did last year, and I'm really excited. So if that interests you and you want to see this journey of going deeper into film photography, you should totally subscribe and you should like this video, because you know what, liking a video it's like giving a virtual high five. And who doesn't like giving high fives? So if you've been on the fence, or if you have been shooting film and you want to shoot more, you should do it. You should jump out there, order some more film, and start this year off right by shooting more film. And now I'm gonna show you all my favorite shots from this year. Okay, bye.